Okay, I think we're officially live, and I am just getting this shared into our couple groups. So if you are joining us, go ahead and drop us a comment. Let us know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see where everybody joins us from. One more. Okay. I think we are live and official. All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our monthly TBI talk. We're here with Dr. Perry Maynard from Integrated Brain Centers in Denver, Colorado. And today we're just kind of talking about the neck connection in TBI and how like whiplash injuries, for instance, are often overlooked, especially like after a car accident. You might be told you're fine, go home, you just have some whiplash, and how those symptoms can kind of, is it the neck or is it the brain injury kind of thing, right? And how they're connected and how the symptoms can be very similar. So, yeah, why don't you just start, Perry, by kind of just sharing, what that looks like when you've had a whiplash injury and how that can affect a TBI.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great point because you can have, like you said, whiplash injuries that look just like brain injuries, and kind of vice versa. And I think the neck is a lot of times very overlooked. And like we may talk in a little bit, there's some pretty crazy stuff that when the neck gets messed up, can cause issues with. I think the big thing is everyone just thinks, well, I don't have neck pain, or my neck feels okay, it doesn't feel too tight, therefore there must be, nothing wrong with it. Really, when you look at the neck, at least what I've seen clinically, and then when you look at the research, is that neck issues can affect inner ear issues. It can affect visual issues. It can affect energy levels, fatigue, brain fog, right? All of these symptoms, right? How many of us, think of maybe brain fog as maybe a manifestation of a neck injury? Probably not a lot, or how many of us think that the double vision that one is experiencing after a car accident is related to their neck? Probably nobody, right? And that's why people go to optometrists, and usually the optometrist is like, your eyes look fine. Your retina looks fine, the nerve looks fine, your eyes track, so it must not be your eyes. And so the reason that this is that, if we think about it from a basic senses, our neck, our inner ear, our vision, our auditory processing, they all integrate into the same areas, which makes sense because our brain needs to understand spatially where are we. So I need to know where my head is, right? And part of the reason I know where my head is because of my neck and my inner ear. But then those have to layer in with vision, so I know that my computer's here, my water bottle's here. And then it's got to integrate with sound to understand that when the door opens behind me, I can turn and I have an understanding that that sound's coming from there. So all of this is processed together. And so it all comes together, and the neck says, here's what I'm thinking. Vision says, here's what I'm thinking. Inner ear says, here's what I'm thinking. And if they all match, then spatially, I'm pretty comfortable. So you can see where that if one of those systems goes wrong, maybe the neck, since we're talking about that then I may have auditory processing issues, right? I may have tinnitus or ringing. I may have hearing loss. Or like a lot of patients say, like, I just don't like when sounds are on this left side. That could be secondary to a neck injury because of how it's integrated. So that's why it can be kind of tricky. And if a doctor doesn't realize that, they may never go to that because unfortunately we're still so myopic in that it's your neck if that you have neck pain. And if you have visual issues, it must be your vision.
Right.
And if you have auditory issues, it must be your ear itself. And that couldn't be farther from the truth with brain injuries, because brain injuries, more often than not, are an integration issue, right? It's like a game of telephone gone bad, right? You have to figure out who's the culprit.
Right.
Giving a terrible clue, or if like you ever played the game Telestrations, it's a really fun game where you have like a word and then you draw, like pig, and then the next person has to go off of your picture and then write out what they think it is, and then it builds and builds and builds. So maybe you start with a baseball player and you end up with like a donkey, and you're like, how did you get to that end conclusion, right?
How did we get here?
Yeah, that's brain injuries. That's literally brain injuries, is just these connections aren't working well. And so that's where something as simple as a neck injury, and we can kind of talk about in a second, the mechanism, can create all of these things that look like someone got their brain scrambled by, a baseball bat or something.
Right, right. And I mean, when you think about your neck, where is our spinal cord? Where does the information run between our brain and our body? It goes through the neck. And so when there is some sort of structural or muscular impingement, or a compression injury, it only makes sense, right? That it would affect so many things. And like you said earlier, it's so overlooked in traditional medicine. They're just simply not trained to look for it. And I think people needlessly suffer, right? Like you said, they'll go to the eye doctor because they have this double vision going on. And I had something similar, and I just kept being told my eyes are fine. My vision was fine. I didn't have any structural damage. But turns out it really was, my eyes. I did have double vision, and I did have, dizziness coming from my eyes, because it's not your actual eyeballs, right? That's it's your brain. It's that whole connection, like you said, the ears and the neck and the eyes. So
yeah, I mean,
so intricately connected.
Oh, for sure. And I see it all the time where, like I said, everyone is cross talking with each other. And then based off of that information, especially the eyes, right? The eyes are receiving information from the world, but they're heavily reliant on the inner ear and the neck, because those are two other systems giving them spatial information. So all the time I'll see patients' eyes, misalign. So one's higher than the other, one's turned in, one's out. And then you turn their head and all of a sudden it normalizes. And then you turn their head another direction, all of a sudden it gets worse. And then you have to start asking yourself, well, why would a change in neck input, right? So a different position of my neck, all of a sudden take my eyes from here and bring them here, right? Unless all of a sudden the eyes are getting better context. I have a patient right now who's got, or did have double vision in all these planes, secondary to a stroke and a brain injury, but a lot of it was a massive whiplash that tore the artery in his neck. And his neck, once again, and that's a big thing too that I think is key, is that sometimes it is secondary to injury to the neck. In other times, it's injury to the part of the brain that integrates the neck, right? And that's the important thing to try to differentiate, because when you look at how a neck injury may cause issues, is, of course, there's the serious things with whiplash, right? Like, fractures to the neck, which we don't want, or like you said, your spinal cord runs in there. So compression of the spinal cord or the nerves. But in a lot of more of these subtle TBIs, or I should say subtle concussions, imaging of the neck is normal. So they say the neck is fine. But the problem is within the neck, within the joint, you have what are called mechanoreceptors. So these are receptors that pick up position and motion of the joint, right? And those can be kind of hard to see on imaging, but also imaging is not going to quantify how those are functioning. Imaging is also not going to quantify how well the muscles and the ligaments and those things are giving feedback back to your brain. So let's say I have a whiplash injury and I stretch the muscle, I stretch the ligaments, I create a little bit of shearing in that mechanoreceptor. They may look fine on imaging, but their ability to function is not working, right?
Mhm.
And in kind of some ways that we can test this is, one is a really easy one we'll do with balance. And we'll test balance with the head neutral, but then all of a sudden what I'll do is to take the inner ear out of it is I'll just turn the body, right? So nothing's changed with my head. All I've changed is my body relative to my head. And what you'll find in individuals with whiplash injuries or where their neck is causing a lot of balance disorders is their balance becomes significantly worse. And you have to be asking yourself, why couldn't the brain understand that you just change position? Why does balance have to get any worse? It shouldn't. Or there's also what's called a smooth pursuit neck torsion test, where you may look at someone track left to right, and then you turn them like this, and then you recheck. And what you see is that if the neck is causing a lot of issues in vision, it may be normal in neutral, but then as soon as you change neck input, all of a sudden the eyes break down. Or, maybe the person says, now I'm getting double vision, or now I'm getting really dizzy. The only variable you changed was the feedback coming from the joint and the muscle. So I like looking at things more functionally. How are things functioning? Static images are great if we're concerned about a spinal cord injury or a disc injury, right? Some of these really serious things, but more often than not, those aren't the problem. And then it, like you said, it gets pushed to the side because it says, well, my MRI was normal. My X-ray was normal. So, there's nothing wrong with my neck. And I was like, well, that tells you nothing about how your brain is perceiving your neck. That's why we have to have tests where we can test the neck, but then we can challenge the neck and say, how is it working with vision? How is it working with the inner ear? How is it working with balance? How is it working with cognition? What if you do something to the neck and then you repeat a memory task? And I've seen that before where it may get much better or much worse. So you can even see that this basic sensory integration can affect even higher up things like executive function. And this is why a lot of times whiplash people will also complain of brain fog and memory issues. And then their neck gets better and then their brain fog goes away.
So I guess, the question here then is, what can we do for it? What can we do about it? Because, fortunately, this is fairly treatable in most cases. So what are some things that you can do to help a patient?
Yeah, definitely. So, I think there's a ton of different tools from, let's talk about maybe the pain side, right? So we know that whiplash injuries can create, of course, neck pain.
Yeah.
But also debilitating headaches.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of great tools, everything from manual therapy, so myofascial work to adjustments, right? Things people already know, but even things with different types of lasers, right? And there's tons of different kind of lasers, topical treatments, things like that that can really help on the pain side. On more of the reintegration side, there's a lot of cool stuff we can do. So one of the things we do very commonly is we'll do a lot where we'll put lasers on different parts of the body and we'll take vision away. We'll take the inner ear away and we'll keep the head still. And I'll start to manipulate the body under the head. And I'll first force that person to start to learn how to understand where my trunk is here versus there. And so what I think about that exercise is helping to improve the input coming from the neck. So think of like a whiplash neck as a really static radio station in the middle of like Kansas, right? And then you get into a metropolitan area and then it's crystal clear, right? So what I'm trying to do with this reintegration is get it to where that radio station is clear to where they know my trunk's left, my trunk's right. Okay, it's over here. So we start with a lot of just kind of reintegration of the neck on top of the manual therapy, but then we start to combine it with different vision training. So maybe I'm moving the neck in different positions and then doing eye exercises. Maybe I'm doing things where I'm integrating the inner ear and the neck. So I'm doing combined head-eye movements where I'm moving the head or, maybe rotating them in a chair. I'll do a lot with like balance where then I'll do balance and then I'll change neck position and have them repeat balance. So I'm doing all these things to challenge that system with whatever system I'm wanting to rebuild, whether that's balance, vision, the inner ear. I mean, I'll even have people do cognitive exercises and will change where their body is relative to their head, right? Because I want to challenge that system and then use another system that I'm trying to get to link together. So there's really a lot of cool stuff. And I agree with you, Amy. I think honestly, some of the neck stuff is like the easiest, I think, to fix or to improve. Vision stuff can be hard. Inner ear stuff can be hard sometimes. And neck stuff can be hard too. But I think there's so many tools, and honestly, sometimes like what looks very miraculous that can come from someone who really understands the neck and how it affects the brain. I mean, I've had patients where they haven't been able to walk without being supported. They're so dizzy, they're falling, or disabled double vision. And you do some work to reintegrate their neck, and they're literally like, it looks like you just like did a magic trick on them. And from the outside, it looks like voodoo magic. But that's when you start to understand, like, oh, that was a whiplash injury, not a brain injury. Because brain injuries aren't going to magically heal in 2 days. But things like whiplash injuries, if the whiplash is messing with the brain, you can sometimes change those relatively quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty cool to see.
If anyone watching, I see there's quite a few of you watching. So if anyone has any questions for Dr. Perry, go ahead and drop those in the comments, and I will monitor those. I know for me, I had a brain injury and a whiplash injury, right? Like I kind of had the double whammy. I landed on my head, but then my head, kind of did that bounce, causing whiplash. And, for me, imaging showed, I had several herniated discs, which, that's good information to have. But all the doctors wanted to do is give me Botox in my neck to try and help with the pain. And I was like, that's just going to like cover up the pain. It's not going to heal, the injury. And so, it took a couple years to get my neck pain under control. And even now, I still have flare-ups if I do something wrong, like sometimes even sneezing can throw your neck back out. But I used to have headaches, just like a constant headache. And now, we've been able to keep those at bay. It's pretty rare that I get a take me out headache now. And, before I was pretty accustomed to spending the day in bed because I had a horrible headache. So I think that pain component alone, just getting somebody out of pain can just be life-changing.
Oh, for sure. I think we underestimate how disabling pain can be, and then how much pain can lead to all these other weird symptoms. Pain can lead to dizziness, to lightheadedness, to mood issue, right? How many of us are happy when we're in pain?
No.
Or then anxiety of, will this ever go away? So yeah, you're totally right. I mean, one of the first things that, if someone's in pain, that's one of the first things that we want to focus on, of trying to reduce, and pain can be really, really difficult. Because there's such an emotional context around it. Pain is an emotional thing because we're perceiving a threat. But going back to the neck is really, really important when it comes to headaches, head and face pain. So that's one of the first places we start. And the big piece though is that we're not just treating the pain, we're treating why it's occurring. Because what might happen is that my neck gets really tight, which then creates the tension, which creates the headache. And I could treat the pain all day long, but if I don't fix the reason the neck is tight, which could be because it's not talking to my eyes. So every time I move my eyes, my neck tightens, or every time my inner ear gets stimulated, my neck tightens, or I have a lack of strength in my neck from a whiplash injury. That's where we really need to treat the pain initially, but then we need to fix the root problem to keep long-term resolution. So it's not just kind of like, I feel good for a few days and then it comes back. I feel good for a few days and then it comes back.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So good info. I'm just checking here. I don't see any questions coming in. I'm a little surprised. But if you're watching the replay, go ahead and drop a question in the comments and we will try and get to that as well. And again, Dr. Perry Maynard from Integrated Brain Centers in Denver, Colorado. You can find them at integratedbraincenters.com. And they are always happy to schedule a free phone consultation with anyone who's interested in learning more about their services. And I know you and Dr. Stedman both are happy to hop on and give a consultation.
Yep. Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's, whether it's even just to chat and find someone good in your area, there's, I think what we do out here in Denver is pretty cool, but there's also some really good people across the country on the East Coast, Midwest, West Coast and stuff like that. So I think that's the cool thing is that there's hope and there's more people than a lot of people know who do good work, but there's not enough. We need far more people doing kind of this type of work. So we're getting there. So yeah, but thank you for having me, Amy. Like I said, I think this is a great topic and such an important topic because so much can be done for it. And so many people can be helped by better understanding the relationship between the neck and brain injuries.
Yeah, absolutely. And so thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Dr. Perry, for being here. We will see you all again next month with our next TBI talk. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.